Hello, everybody. Very nice to see you all. I didn't realize I was live here. We're looking forward to a discussion now that will focus on government efforts towards affordable housing, including Ghana, Egypt, and South Africa. I am delighted to be having this discussion. I think there have been an excellent introduction earlier today. And now we'll carry on with this. If you just bear with us one moment as we pull together our speakers. Can I see the other speakers who are part of this session? Have they arrived yet? We are still waiting. There we are. I'm joined by my chairman.
Thanks.
Hello, Andrew.
How are you?
I'm fine. I'm trying to work out the technology on this. It's moving from one room to the next without leaving my seat. We are still waiting for some of our panelists to join us. I think the critical issue that we face across the continent, and particularly to housing, which is such a multi-sectoral endeavor. We have to engage with different departments of government, with land affairs, with the human settlements or housing departments, with departments that relate to the different spheres of government, with municipalities and so on. All of the different government departments coming together as they provide approvals for housing delivery, as the finance department, as it creates the enabling environment for the macro environment that sets the framework for how the finance will flow in terms of the development. There's an enormous amount that the government itself needs to do, not always just in the direct delivery, but also in I would say more significantly in enabling the environment to make it feasible and conducive for private sector investment in the delivery of affordable housing. So we have with us today, we will have our moderator, Mr. Andrew Chimponda. He is the chairman of the African Union for Housing Finance, as well as the CEO of Shelter Afrique. And Andrew, I think I'm going to ask you to introduce your panelists and take over the reins from me as the moderator of this session. Is that fine?
It's absolutely fine. And thank you for kicking us off. Really appreciate that. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in. You are tuned into a wonderful stream A, which actually has the, very important guests today. Our topic is government efforts towards affordable housing. This includes Ghana, Egypt, and South Africa. I'm very pleased to introduce to you Madam May Abdullah Hamid, who's also the Deputy Chairperson or Vice President of the African Union of Housing Finance, and also the MD for Social Housing and Mortgage Finance Fund in Egypt. I think I'll allow Madam May to maybe just greet everyone and just give everyone her background. And then after that, we'll move over to Mbulelo Changana, but I'll introduce after Madam May. Madam May, if you can do a quick intro of yourself, and then we can move to our next panelist.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be with you again this year. Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction, and thank you, Keisha, for moderating this session. I'm happy to be again in the conference for the second year. Last year, we did a presentation on Egypt case. I'm May Abdelhamid, the CEO of the Social Housing and Mortgage Finance Fund of Egypt. I've been holding this position for the past 10 years. Before that, I was facilitating the mortgage market. I was working with the financial regulator of the mortgage market to facilitate and create the pillars of the mortgage market in Egypt. Before those 15 years, we haven't had a mortgage law or a mortgage business in Egypt. I had a banking background. I worked for American Express Bank for 10 years as a corporate head. That was my last title in the bank. And I worked for Crédit Lyonnais Bank also earlier before joining American Express. So my background is in banking and finance, and that's quite weird because I work for social housing. And I'm not the only. I might be the only one who is not an engineer in our Ministry of Housing, but I think that makes things better because it's all about financing. It's and making a sustainable housing finance program is all about finding the necessary financing methods to make the program affordable and sustainable at the same time. So I hope we can all benefit from the discussions today, and that I give you a good brief about Egypt case and insights from the Egypt case. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Madam May. Always good to listen to you, and also we're looking forward to the presentation. And I'm going to maybe ask you to start first. Before you start, I would like to also introduce Mbulelo Changana, who is the Director General of the National Department of Human Settlements in South Africa. Please, if you could introduce yourself to our members or viewers. And then lastly, I will move after that introduction to Delali Zumanu. Thank you. Mr. Changana, thank you. Okay, I think if Mari, if you can check what's happening with South Africa there. And then let me move to Delali Zumanu, the coordinator of National Housing and Mortgage Fund in Ghana. A very interesting fund they've set up. Maybe you may want to introduce yourself. Okay. I will introduce them when they come in. I think for the people listening in, it's important for us to give you a background of the objective of today's session. The objective is to explore the range of interventions that government can undertake to promote affordable housing. These, of course, range from the regulatory initiatives, the funding initiatives, including subsidization, and how they make the environment conducive to the ability to deliver one thing, which is the key objective, the end product. Is the house affordable? Is it low cost? Is it high quality? And the funding to allow the beneficiaries to take up that house. Is the interest cost, the finance costs affordable? Is the product ideal, be it a mortgage loan or an incremental housing microfinance product, or maybe it's a rent to buy, or maybe it's just a long-term lease. So I guess without any further delay, I really would want, as Madam May goes through a presentation, to cover issues to do with the interventions the Egyptian government are making across the various steps within the value chain, what the role of government in promoting an effective functioning property market should be, and of course how government achieves synergy and alignment in the pursuit of the housing objectives. So, Madam May, Madam Vice President, the floor is yours. If you can start sharing, and as I pick up any questions, I will note them and maybe ask them at the end of your presentation. So over to you. It looks like a beautiful presentation. The only thing that's wrong is the COVID viruses. I think they should be red, not green. But over to you. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. We'll go through the presentation. We'll just give a quick overview about Egypt, so that everyone is aware what is the demographics we are working in. So our population as of this October is 102 million persons, 27.7 million households. The average household size is 4. Urban residents represent 44% of Egyptian population, while the rural residents are 56%. The average spending on family on housing is around 19% of monthly income. We have 879,000 marriages last year, down 1% from the previous year, and that gives you an indication of the amount of housing we need every year for household formation. Real estate stock is 43 million units. 76% of Egyptian units are owned by the households. So home ownership is 76%. 70% are under old rental law, and by old rental law we mean units that were rented under rent control law, where rents were fixed from the 60s. Until now, these rental contracts were not amended. So the rent is very trivial or nominal. And this is needing some interventions in terms of amending such law. We had a new rental law in '96, so we have 6% under this new rental law. This new rental law is you rent at the market prices, and you are allowed to do annual increases. The working force or the age groups, we have 50% below the 65, so the 50% of the population is in the working force. We have a stock that needs some replacement also, so around 1% of the stock needs to be replaced. Our estimates for annual demand is around 500,000 every year, because in the 43 million units we have, there are some units that are already vacant. So not everyone who is getting married is getting a new home. Some of them have already homes or do extensions to their homes. So the estimates done by the World Bank with us were that 500,000 units per year are needed. Some economic indicators, we were doing very well since 2016. We started a reform program, an economic reform program, where we floated the currency. We had some issues where inflation rocketed and the costs of houses increased tremendously, but we were starting 2016, we started to have good economic indicators. So we were ranked like the third in the Economic Integration Index in Africa and the second among the integrated countries in the field of infrastructure. We did a lot of infrastructure projects. We were ranked the first in Africa in attracting investments from outside the continent, and considered the only state that achieved positive growth within the 5 major countries to attract FDI, with an increase of 11% and total FDI of $9 billion. The World Bank ranked Egypt as the largest economy in the Middle East and North Africa, and expected that Egypt will continue to grow at a rate of increase in GDP of 5 to 6% every year due to improved rates of investments and private consumption. The current account deficits, that was very wide, and we managed to reduce it to reach 2.3%. So that was pre-COVID. With post-COVID, we had some economic problems arising, but also some opportunities. So unemployment rate increased to 9.6% in 2020 compared to 8.1% in the beginning of the year, which was a considerable improvement. We had a rate of 13% unemployment prior to 2014, when we started the economic stimulus packages and started large state investments in projects of infrastructure and housing. Economic growth was 5.6 in fiscal year 2018-2019, then fell to 3.8 in 2020 due to COVID in the last quarters, which impacted negatively on the growth rates. It is estimated to further slow down to 2.8 by the end of this fiscal year in June 2021. We expect to start picking up again in the last quarters of 2021 and going forward, hopefully, when the second wave of COVID concerns are away, hopefully. Yet with these negatives, we had the credit rating of Egypt was maintained at the same ranking prior to COVID by both Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. The foreign reserves fell from 45.5 billion to 38 billion. That is a 7 billion decrease in foreign reserves, and that was mainly due to the tourism sector that stopped completely, and that was contributing around 15 billion US dollars to the GDP and the foreign reserves. Despite that, we maintained a stable currency. Inflation rate improved to 3.5, down from 9.5. We had, when we floated the pound against the US dollar, we had this year a 35% inflation rate. So that was quite an improvement. We reached a 3.5% inflation rate, yet our interest rate environment is still in the double digits. We have interest rates for lending is around 12%, and deposit rates is in the area of 10 to 11%, so still quite high. We have a good nominal interest rate of 6.5%, which is why we have a lot of foreign investments in treasury bills and treasury bonds as well. The remittances of expats outside Egypt helped us to not lose a lot of the foreign reserves. We had increases in remittances of expats despite of COVID, and the remittances increased to around $27 billion. A quick thing about the mortgage market pillars. We had issued, as I explained earlier, a mortgage law in 2001. The law sets the minimum criteria for a loan to avoid issues that can arise from lending to subprime clients. So we have a maximum LTV of 90%. We have a maximum installment of 40% of monthly income. A maximum loan offered to a single person or family should not exceed 10% of a mortgage finance company equity. And by mortgage finance company, I mean under the mortgage law, we have specialized mortgage companies that do a single product, that is mortgage lending, as well as the 39 banks that are regulated by the Central Bank of Egypt, which are also allowed to offer a mortgage loan under the current law. The properties should be valued by certified appraisers before financing, and we have a regulated business for appraisers. So they are licensed, they do reports, they put copies of those reports financial regulatory authority. They are properly licensed, and the license is renewed to make sure we have a good appraisal thing. The incomes must be verified and accepted by lenders. This does not mean that we have to have a formal income, but there should be some proof of income that the lender, based on which can evaluate the real income of the applicant who will apply for a mortgage loan. We had under the law a sentence or an article that provides for establishing a mortgage finance support fund to facilitate or make the necessary financial intervention to make the mortgages affordable for a low-income person at least. Because under the current regime and the prices we have of properties, and without some intervention from the government side, it is totally very difficult to perceive that a low-income person can get a flat at the regular market interest rates and the price ranges of units. We had done some modifications to make the mortgage market well functioning. So we reduced property registration fees. It has been historically at 12%. We reduced that to £2,000 maximum per unit. We established a simplified foreclosure process. And this process was successfully tested at the courts, and this is what encouraged lenders to come in and start lending to both middle, low, or high income persons, because before this law we haven't had mortgage law, but rather than personal loans extended to purchase housing at very high interest rates, because they didn't have the foreclosure or the title to be able to foreclose on the defaulted clients. That's the increase of the mortgage market. The graph at the left is the increase of the mortgage market. When I started in December 2006, we were at around less than $1 billion. Now we stand at 30 billion for banks and mortgage companies at the end of June. So quite a considerable increase. And this is thanks to the social housing program that we started in the middle of 2014 that I will give brief on now. We in 2014 we started a very ambitious social housing program that should achieve the 4 main SDGs. The SDG 5 for gender equality, to allow men and women equal opportunities to buy a flat, and to give extra opportunity to widows with kids, divorced woman or a divorced kid, to be able to sign a contract and get access to a mortgage loan and a social housing unit. All the social housing units are connected to the basic infrastructure to provide the inhabitants with an easy access to clean water. So this is promoting the SDG 6. We also are focusing on marginalized groups like women, disabled people, and self-employed people. And this is SDG 10. We give preference to women, as I said, when we allocate units for social housing. We give allocation to disabled people of 5% of all the units we build. We give equal opportunity to people who are self-employed, who are working in the informal sector, to enable or to create an enabling environment for the marginalized groups. Also, the social housing make a major contribution to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal 11 in the majority of Egyptian people, addressing serious service shortages in a participatory matter and bridging the affordability gap by innovating digitalized affordable housing program, which targeted over 1 million units, distributed over 283 million units. We are also extending the program targets SDGs. We have set a new environment unit at the fund. We want to start start building green units going forward. So this will promote good health and well-being, affordability and cleanliness, industry innovations, climate actions, and so on and so forth. So we will touch on all the SDGs once we start building or promote the program towards building green homes. These are units that we have already built and delivered so far. As I explained, in 2014, the president announced the launching of a social housing program for the low-income households. Prior to that, we had limited numbers of units offered through a mortgage system. So starting 2014, we started to see a big jump in numbers and delivery. We arranged with the banks to provide finance needed to build 1 million units by government of Egypt all across Egypt, not necessarily in the old Nile Valley where we sit. We want to expand and urbanize more and go increase the area where we live on. We live on 6% of the total area of Egypt, and we have a target to increase that to 12 or 13% by the end of 2024. So that's quite a challenge from infrastructure side, from financing side, but so far we have managed to go very, very well in this challenge, and probably the indicators I will show in the end will show you what we achieved so far. So the fund was granted new tasks and mandates to propose and plan social housing, not just to do or facilitate the mortgage process, but also to provide the necessary financing to build houses, because we needed a product to be there to be able to finance it through the mortgage system, not just the mortgages itself, because we haven't had like appropriate products for low-income people. We do a lot of interventions to make the units affordable for the low-income people. So we do cash subsidies that are deducted from the unit price. So far, we have had 3 loans from the World Bank, totaling $1.3 billion. We use these loans to provide the cash subsidies to beneficiaries or to applicants of the social housing we manage to build. We do the contracting through the private sector, so that provides a lot of opportunities for employment. I think we added around 1% of GDP, and with the increases in number, we will add around 2% by 2024. We provided employment to more than 1.5 million people so far since we started the program, and 1 million people in direct employment opportunities. So that is quite considerable, especially in times of crisis like COVID, when we managed to release more units to be built and offered to the public. We managed to maintain the employment levels through these projects we are contracting. We provide units, as I explained, in new cities and old cities. We sell at cost plus 5%. Yet we have a lot of indirect subsidy elements that I will explain in the coming slides. We handle all the applications processes and delivery of up till the delivery of units to the beneficiaries. And we monitor occupancies of the beneficiaries after we deliver the units to make sure that the services are all there and that we targeted the right beneficiaries who need the units. This is our strategic planning process. We build the housing units according to the actual household demand. So we offer an ad, and we get in the major cities where we have land, and we get the applications. Then we start building based on the applications. We set the parameters of the program according to the minimum wages we have and the household data survey we do every couple of years. So we set income ceiling for the program, and we set also the subsidy levels we are going to offer to each category of income to make sure we offer the appropriate level of subsidy that make the house affordable for each category, and that we don't pay extra subsidy for people who do not actually need it. So we apply a program where we have different subsidy level to different income groups. We also managed to, in the strategic planning, we were sure that we need well-functioning institutions' capacity to handle the low-income household survey. We are talking about a million applications. This is quite big. And we have a small institution here, so we had to build a good capacity, a good digital platform to handle the application process with the lenders up till the deliveries of the unit, and so that we can monitor and get complaints and go on with the process well and make it well function. So that's the strategic planning. The program strategy, as I explained, our number one is to strategy is to consider the marginalized group. So we designed the program in a flexible manner that takes into account the requirements of all citizens. We targeted certain income groups in order to enable them to obtain their economic and social rights. The lowest income group ranked the number one concern or priority in our social housing program during our ongoing review and development stages of the program. We were sure we needed intervention. Our analysis of the income groups and the household incomes, as I said, through the income surveys we do every couple of years. So our current interventions are 5,000 to 60,000 cash subsidy that are granted to beneficiaries depending on each income level. So the lowest income strata gets the highest cash subsidy, and the higher level of income gets the lowest cash subsidy. And for certain categories, they do not need cash subsidy, so we give them interest rate subsidy only. We are subsidizing also interest rates, so we are doing a program of under a 7% interest rate. This is quite a subsidized rate because we have a mortgage rate of 12 to 14% for a 20-year loan regular income. And we set the targets for income groups, as I said. So we have a maximum ceiling for 5,700 for household. This is for the last call for applications we had. Now we have opened applications yesterday. Again, this is our 14th ad for social housing, and we raised the income ceilings to 6,000 per household. We also provide some indirect subsidy. We don't calculate land price in the unit price, but we sell without share in the land for the house. So they just buy the house without share in the piece of land where the building is set on. We don't add the infrastructure cost. This is also an element of subsidy that we are paying from our side as government. So we have around like 80%, more than 80% of unit as a subsidy. So we sell the unit at 300,000, while the unit cost, including the interest rate subsidy and the cash subsidy and the indirect subsidy elements, is around 250. So around 80%, and that's quite costly. But this is viewed by the government as a very important social and economic program that is worth allocating a good portion of GDP to deliver it, because this is a social housing and a social safety net for citizens. We provide also services inside the communities because, as I explained, we are delivering units in new cities mostly. So 75% of the program units were located in new cities. So we needed to provide all the service projects required, not just a residential unit in the deserts, but we needed to establish like schools, mosques, different services needed, shops, stadiums, administrative units, and school, and so on and so forth. So that's also quite a cost. On the impact of COVID, we had a difficult 6 months. Thanks God, we are starting to pick up. The first 3 months of the crisis witnessed a drop of the number of units we were delivering by 65%, and this is basically because we had partial lockdowns. The banks reduced the working hour. They were working at a 50% capacity. We haven't had any full lockdown since COVID started, but the partial lockdown had its impact. We had some lockdowns in registration office where they issued the power of attorney for bank to mortgage the units. So some considerable slowdown in activity, which reduced our capacities, and we witnessed a drop in the number of units delivered by 60%. Numbers started to pick up again starting early summer in August when we ended the partial lockdown. We haven't come back yet to the previous levels, but we are around at 75% of where we were before COVID. We picked the locations. Maybe you will have those details inside the presentation if you want to look at more details. But we prepared the buildings to be equipped with solar heaters. We have green spaces everywhere of the project's building. We ensure access to clean water and safe disposal of sewage. We build with good and acceptable design and durable materials. We pick the locations to be having all the living requirements. We build according to the Egyptian code. Okay.
Madam May,
shall I go quicker? You want me quicker, Andrew? Yes. We'll try to.
Yes. Well, you've got so much beautiful stuff. I was just going to say. I see Tanzania have come in, so yeah, if you can.
Okay, we will.
If 5 minutes, you can wrap up. Okay,
we'll wrap up in 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam May. But it's very good presentation.
Thank you. You will have the detailed presentation just to have, so that everyone has the details of what we have done on the fiscal level and on the monetary level to counter the impact of COVID. What we did is that we are speeding up the construction of 250,000 units extra. We started, as I said, we are doing a new ad. We're applying the highest levels of precautionary measures to provide safety and health care for workers. We do all the measures needed for workers before they start. Sometimes they stay in their sites for 15 days, and then we change shifts every 15 days to make sure construction doesn't slow down. So that we don't face delays in the deliveries of the program or the drops in the employment levels we have. To have a quick look on the numbers we've had since 2014, we started with limited numbers, then with credibility increasing and delivering of units on the ground, people started to apply more. We reached 1,050,000 applications up till now. And we have, as I said, a new ad that is open now for the public for 125,000. the current status of the program, we inquired about 650,000 citizens. We sent 484,000 applications to bank. The rest were not accepted. They were not found ineligible. The allocated units so far are around 350,000 units that were delivered to beneficiaries. So more than 1.5 million people were moved to those new houses. We are what we are working for. These are the distribution of the units, where they are located, the regions all across Egypt. We finished 454,000 units so far, 350 of which were delivered, and the rest is being delivered, 10,000 every month, as I explained, given the bank's capacity of delivery and application, our application processing, and the rest is still under construction. These are the performance indicator by project type, by ages, by marital status. So the bulk is in the married with children part. People are working, people applying are mostly in the age group below 40, despite we have a criteria of a maximum of 50, but most of it is under 40. The employment, we have self-employed. As I said, we have around 17% self-employed, not necessarily government employees or private sector employees in formal employment. We have 21.41 female, and this comes with our target to give equal opportunities to households that are headed by females. The numbers increased dramatically. We reached 330,000 already financed up till end of September. They got financing from the banks of 33 billion Egyptian pounds from 22 banks and 8 mortgage companies, and they got cash subsidies of around 5.2 billion. Okay. Thank you so much. We'll leave the rest with you.
I love you so much, but
thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Keisha. Sorry for taking a bit longer than required.
No. The pharaohs in Egypt that built all those pyramids, 138 pyramids, they are still with you because you are the country which received 1.3 billion US dollars to be able to provide subsidies from the World Bank, you know, your cash interest rate subsidies and indirect subsidies. And I mean, 3% inflation rate, #1 country in Africa for attracting investment. Madam May, I'm putting a challenge to you. Egypt has to be a member of Shelter Afrique. By this time next year, you have to be a member so that we can take all those learnings through the AUHF and through Shelter Afrique, which looks at 44 countries, so that we can actually be able to learn, because I don't think we can do justice right now. But Madam May, thank you so much. I have the pleasure now of introducing Dilali Zumamnu from Tanzania. If Mr. Dilali, you can introduce yourself. Sorry, from Ghana. From Ghana, I'm actually wearing Ghana just to support you. This is to welcome you, Dilali. So, brother Dilali, I know where this comes from.
Yes,
so,
Andrew.
Yeah. So, without any further delay, just tell the members and the viewers a bit about yourself, and then take us into the key aspects you'd like us to know about the wonderful gold country of Ghana. And I know you don't have a presentation, you're going to talk to it. So if you can be crisp, and anything else that you've not been able to share, you can send it to the Secretariat so that it can also be on the website, so we don't lose anything, even if the conference is over. Over to you, Mr. Zumanu.
Andrew, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very excited to be part of this conference. I'm unable to share or speak from slides this morning because I got an invitation to join this very late, almost I think on Friday thereabout. So when I'm done, I will kind of send the slides so that you can put it up on the website. My name is Delali Zumanu. I'm with the National Housing and Mortgage Fund in Ghana. Is in finance and quite some social stuff in the past. But typically, for the last 2 years, I've been supporting the Ministry of Finance in its quest to provide affordable housing for the many Ghanaian workers who need a place to put their head. And this morning, I'll be speaking to the following issues. I'll look at a little background to how housing has been done in Ghana over the years. We'll look at the demand and supply side in our housing market. Look at typically the demand side, because in Ghana, we have two main ministries that are involved in the housing sector. That's the Ministry for Works and Housing, who will more concentrate on the supply side, and the Ministry of Finance, who will look at the demand side. And because I am from the Ministry of Finance, I'll concentrate most of my discussion on the demand side. Meanwhile, I'll mention a few things that relate to the supply side. We'll also look at a few indicators within our markets in Ghana, and also look at what the government is doing in terms of its initiatives for affordable housing, and then look at what we have done so far, what we have achieved so far, and then also look at what our next steps are going forward. Now, I'd like to give a little background. The truth of the matter is that since independence in the 1950s, almost every government in Ghana has tried to put up some affordable housing for its people. But the level of our success or the continuity or the sustainability has always been the problem. As you may know, in most of our African countries, when one government leaves power, the other government typically would not want to continue some of the projects that the other government has started. For that reason, a lot of our housing projects, for affordable housing projects, have been left unfinished anytime one government leaves power and the other government takes over. As a result of that, we've had very checkered history in terms of affordable housing, and there's been too many problems within this space. But unfortunately, this current government is determined to look at what the issues are, what the problem is, so that we can resolve it holistically and get to provide housing for our people. Now, what we did was to say that let's look at what the problem is. Why is it that over the years, governments have not been able to deliver affordable housing to the people of Ghana? And in order to achieve this result, it was necessary for us to look at what the problems were. Can we solve those problems? If we can solve those problems, how do we solve them? How do we solve them such that it becomes sustainable solutions to our problems in delivering affordable housing? As a result of the 2008 budget, the MPP government decided to put an initiative in that budget. And that initiative typically looks at the fact that there's the need to do what I call a proper survey, a proper research of what our industry looks like, what the challenges are, and how we can deal with it. As a result of that, we came across a few challenges that our industry has been dealing with in the past. And some of those problems are problems that I believe are everywhere. The first one for us in Ghana is probably the way we acquire land, our land tenure system. You know, in Ghana, lands typically belong to the chiefs, belongs to families. And in the last few years, it's become very chaotic in that land system. You cannot build houses without a land. And unlike in other places where lands belong to government and all that, in Ghana, lands typically, majority of lands belong to chiefs and families. And so you need to buy these lands from chiefs and families in order to develop them. Now, what we have found out is that there are instances where these lands are sold to multiple people, and there's a lot of chaos in trying to resettle people and all that. And in recent time, we've had what we call the land guard system, where when people buy land, they get macho people, they get people who have machetes, people who have guns, tax to protect these lands. Therefore, there's a lot of chaos in that. The second thing is that when it comes to the issues of dealing with the rate of construction finance, you'll find out that the rates are so high that it is typically impossible for ordinary Ghanaians to own homes at those high rates. You're also talking about the issue of the fact that even when it comes to mortgage rates, you don't find a difference between an ordinary rate, an ordinary loan and that of a mortgage, because the rates are literally the same. And the banks have become disinterested in mortgages because of the default in that market. A lot of people are unable to earn ECB because these loans are also linked to the dollar. And anytime the dollar is is going up, you realize that people cannot pay their mortgages. Therefore, there's a need for foreclosure. Now, another problem with foreclosure is that our laws literally protect the tenant. Therefore, the banks take almost years having to go to court, stay in court for years before they can foreclose on the property. That obviously does not make it easy for any bank to want to continue to issue such within the setup. Now, beyond that, the other basic problems of demand and supply to the two parties working together to determine who gets what and how. And typically also most of the lands that can be used for affordable housing are no longer within the city centers. They are way on the outskirts of the city. So you are thinking, and our railways, our transportation, traffic coming to work and all that. So if the objective of affordable housing is for the ordinary worker who works in the ministries or work in the, it becomes difficult for them to have houses way outside the outskirts of town and then having to join traffic for hours in order to get to work. So all these have become problems that has plagued our affordable housing, setup. And so these were some of the things we found in dealing with it. Now, going forward, the initiative that was set up by government in the 2018 budget was to say, look, let's renew the pledge to provide houses for our people. Now, how do we do this? In Ghana, we say we have over 2 million housing deficit. What that means is that it did not happen over a day, it did not happen over a year. Over many years, this has compounded and grown up to this stage. Therefore, that thinking is that if you want to solve it, you cannot solve it in a day. And so what do? We need to look at how do we solve this one chip at a time. The second issue also that we needed to deal with was the fact that there were some cultural issues. To provide affordable housing, many places will go high-rise, many places will go apartments. Unfortunately, in Ghana, the cultural nuances are so deep that people would normally not want to deal with flats because sometimes, very funnily, we have a staple food or a very traditional food called fufu, and people want to pan fufu. So for that reason, you'll be amazed. It's very funny, but that's what people will tell you that, well, if I go up, and I don't feel like the house is mine if I live in an apartment. I don't know whether it's in other African countries, but in Ghana, people want to feel like they have a space around which is their own. If you live in an apartment, typically it's just the space you live in that is yours. So they don't feel like they own the home. And so these are some of the cultural, traditional issues we've got to deal with. But going forward, I think the middle class is growing very largely. The middle class is getting used to apartments. And so we have some light at the end of the tunnel that going forward, these cultural issues will be dealt with and people begin to appreciate the fact that if we need to accommodate a lot of people, we need to go up because being on the floor, we will not be able to do what we've been set out to do all over these years. So what did the initiative do? The initiative was to say that we have found out two key problems. The first one is the issue about construction finance and the cost of it being so high. And the second one is the mortgage, which is also dollar denominated and is also very so high. So government decided to set up a scheme. So out of the initiative in 2018, we called the National Housing and Mortgage Initiative, National Housing and Mortgage Finance Initiative. That initiative gave birth to the National Housing and Mortgage Fund. The fund gave birth to two very important schemes that we're trying. We gave ourselves 2 years to try this on a pilot basis and see if we can learn lessons based on which we can develop legislation, we can develop policy, and also we can be able to learn lessons and develop a proper structure to deliver affordable housing. And so what we did was to say that, look, let's solve the two problems I talked about, which is construction finance being so high and then mortgages being so high as well. So what did government do? Government decided to set up two schemes. The first scheme was to say, let's pilot with public sector workers, because in Ghana, public sector workers do not earn as much as private sector do, even though generally in Ghana, salaries are not very fantastic as compared to other, of our colleagues in the sub-region. A survey that I read said Ghana typically had about the least average salaries in the public sector and generally as a country. So as a result of that, it became necessary for us to do a pilot using the public sector. Now, what the government did was to do a private sector collaboration and to say that we're going to advertise for banks who are interested in doing this business with us to come up. So we've got 5 banks coming up, literally work with 3 of them. And now what government did was to say, look, government was going to give them money that we're going to match. But government was going to give that money at literally 2%. Because generally in Ghana, the interest rate is between 18% and 25%, depending on which bank and depending on their source of funding. But typically, the average, you are talking about over 20%. Now, government says that I am not going to do 20%. I'm going to do 2%. Now, I want banks to match how much I bring on board. So if government brought 10 million on board, 10 million cedis, it was expecting that the banks would also bring another 10 million on board so that we'll match them. Now, at the time we're doing this, the treasury bill rate, which is more like the standard for banks, was around 15% or 12%. So government says that even if your cost of borrowing as a private bank is around that of treasury bill, add 3% to it and let's match. So when that happens, then the blended rate became around 10%. So the banks were like, okay, so it's costing us 10%. Both bank and government says it's costing us 10% to raise this funding. Okay, now what do we do with it? What we do is that government says that banks underwrite mortgages at a plus 2%, meaning that mortgages should not go beyond 12%. And that means in CD terms, not in dollar terms, because we want to build our mortgage system such that it is CD denominated and Ghanaians can borrow and lock in the rates without having to be thinking that if the dollar goes up, they are going to have problems paying their mortgages. Now, when it comes to construction finance, because construction finance is going to be either in 6 months, maximum 1 year. Now, let's give construction finance a maximum of 15%. That's a margin of 5% for the banks to do. And the banks were very excited about it. They got into the scheme and then we're happy to do this. Now, government says that I am a policy institution. I don't want to get involved in the operations of whatever it is. So we sign contracts with the banks to say that, look, go out there, look for your own developers who are willing to do the 15% and also do your own checks and everything. But we work with the supply side, which is the Ministry of Works and Housing, which set up what we call the National Housing Committee. What the committee does is that it looks up to standards. It looks up to measurement. It looks up to making sure that whatever it is we are building is actually of a certain quality and of a certain standard. So before we pass any developer, we look at his designs. We had a standard design that says that, look, if it's a 2-bedroom, we need the spaces to be this, we need the rooms to be that, we need all those things were agreed, material and everything we agreed. So you could bring your own different design, but it just has to meet the standard that the National Housing Committee has set up. Now, as a result of that, the banks selected their developers and then they were supposed to go and do building. Now, the supply side also made sure that we spoke to public sector, unions and all that who got interested in this. And we also had price tags for the houses. Now, the reason why it became necessary to tag the prices were that we're giving you the developer financing at a maximum of 15%. That means that the cost was very, very good for them. They didn't need to go and borrow at 20, 25, 30%, which would be passed on to those houses. So what it meant was that they agreed with us to cap their houses, 2-bedroom houses, 2 1-bedroom expandables, and then 3-bedroom houses at given rates that we believe were rates that was good. But the thing we also noticed was that you can build houses only at a certain minimum price, because if one cement bag is an X amount, you cannot buy it for less than amount. So there's a minimum cost that goes into building a house. So the committee worked with us to agree on those minimum prices. That's to give some margins to the developers, and they were very happy about those margins. The bank were also happy because their margins were also in there. Now, we gave ourselves a year and a half to run this as a pilot project to learn our lessons from it. And so these banks got to work and delivered some houses, even though they didn't meet the standards we had given them in terms of the timelines and the number of houses to deliver. We learned our own lessons from these banks as well. Now, something interesting was also learned throughout this process. Through our process, we realized that in the public sector, from the analysis we did, almost over 70% of them could still not get these mortgages because their salaries could not support it. So then the National Housing Mortgage Fund, together with the Ministry of Finance, had to think about a way around this. And the way around this was to set up what we call the Real Estate Investment Trust. Now, the Real Estate Investment Trust was supposed to come in there and help the majority of the public sector workers who did not have access, could not have access to these mortgages because of their low salaries, to be able to rent these homes that the REITs will provide, and in the long run, be able to own them. So then we got what we call the rent to own, policy, or the rent to own initiative. And that was also done between a public sector institution and the public sector institution, which is We use one of our big banks, a subsidiary, to do this. And to be very honest with you, it turned out to be the game changer. It turned out to be the game changer because what the REIT did was to rent apartments or buy apartments that it rented out to public sector workers. Now, what we found out was that it took away all the bureaucracies, it took away all the who I knows and the political influences, and ordinary workers, teachers, nurses could just go and apply for these homes and pay regular rents as they would have paid on their own. But this time around, without having to pay a year's advance or 2 years advance. So in Ghana, unfortunately, rentals were such that if you want to rent a home, the owner of the house will probably demand of you at least a year's advance rent or 2 years. In some cases, 2 years. You have to pay down cash 2 years advance before you enter into their homes. We took away that obstruction as well. So people rented homes and just had to pay on a monthly basis without necessarily have to pay those big and huge, advances. And that is a game changer because we are able to house a lot of who are very excited to pay rents monthly without having to. And the catch here is that because the rent to own, initiative, they can own these homes in the long run. Now, how do they own these homes? And that's a very good question. They own these homes because part of the payment that they are making as rent now goes in as equity to pay the residual value anytime they decided to own it. Secondly, in our pension setup, we have 3 tiers of pensions. We have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1 goes to pay annuities when you retire, or a monthly pensions when you retire. Tier 2 goes to pay what we call the lump sum. So when you are paid a lump sum of whatever contributions you've done in that tier. And the tier 3 is a voluntary tier that you can always go into before or after 10 years. Now, what has happened is that the law itself says that, that's the Pensions Act, says that people can use their retirement benefits to buy homes or to pay for a mortgage. As a result of that, the rent to own is targeting this tier 2 lump sums to say that, look, you be paying your monthly rent. Let's have some bit of it as equity. At the time you are willing to take the option of owning it, let's value the house. Let's take your equity out. How much residual is left? If by that time you are retiring and your lump sum can pay for it, that's good. Or we encourage them to look out to paying these residuals using their lump sums from their tier 2. And we're also saying that by which time, if they are retiring at 60, which is a retirement age in Ghana, you'll find out that a lot of them, their kids or their children would have left school and have been working and can support their parents or can support whoever they are to them to be able to pay up these residual values and own these homes. And the responses we are getting tells us that rent to own initiative, if properly structured, having learned the lessons and everything, could become a game changer for house ownership in Ghana. Now, what has government done? What government has done is that we decided to do a pilot to see how it feels like to build houses for ordinary Ghanaians. So government entered into some relationship with one of its public sector institutions that has the mandate to build homes. We call the TEMA Development, TDC Development Corporation. And they were very happy to work with us. Within 9 months, even within the COVID period, we managed to build 204 homes within 9 months. We use almost 80% of local, inputs. We use local, and they were very happy because funding was flowing. And so anytime they were done in a portion, they presented certificates, we paid in weeks, and they were happy to deliver. Indeed, last Monday, the President of the Republic launched that enclave, which is a successful pilot project. It was done on record cost, done on record time, done with record standards, and done with record quality. And so we've learned a lot of lessons. So that's one of the initiatives that government has put in place to see. And it was a test case for us because we learned a lot. Now, some of the things we've learned is that the banks, because they've bent their fingers in the past, are not interested or do not have the expertise to supervise the building of homes. So what we've learned is that, look, we'll leave the building of homes, which is the construction financing, we'll take it away from the banks and give it to another institution that has the capacity to supervise the building of homes. Then what the banks will be left to do will be to mortgage these homes when they were done. And that relationship works perfectly for the banks. Indeed, they have come to confess that when it comes to supervising the building and going to the field and all that, is quite a little bit of a job for us. So what we have learned going forward is that in order to make affordable housing an interesting bit of our project, we may have to redefine the role of the banks just to stay at the mortgage end and looking for another institution that has the technical competence to go into the field, get the properties, get the lands, deliver these houses in record time, record quality, and also at the least cost that is possible. Now, going forward, we've decided as an institution or as government to say that these houses can become cheaper if government puts in some subsidies. Because in the project we did at Committee 22, we were able to bring down the prices to the level of public sector workers because government decided to pay for half of the infrastructure cost. So in infrastructure, we are talking about roads within the enclave. We are talking about building of electricity, bringing water to the side, doing culverts and gutters. And going forward, Ghana used to have very open drains. But going forward, part of the decision is that all projects that government is going to be involved in should have covered drains so that the issue of sanitation will not become a problem. And then each of these affordable housing enclaves must all have tarred roads, must have places for playgrounds and all that. It must be a community that has all the necessary amenities that is befitting of where people must live. Because in the past, what we found out is that people have to build on their own. And infrastructure is almost between 25 and 30% of the project cost of a house. So depending on where you are building, depending on how your infrastructure, how close the infrastructure development is to your end. So for example, if the electricity lines are not close to your project, it means that it will take a lot more wiring or a lot more cabling to get to your site. That's an extra cost. If the water pipelines or the major lines that will give you water is not close to your site, it means that you have to pay more for them to put the pipes to get to your site. And these are all things that have made housing very difficult for us in Ghana. But from the project we have run, it has become very obvious to us that if government gets involved in subsidizing some of these costs,
Brother Diladi?
Yes, sir.
My brother, exciting presentation. I was going to suggest, because we went above our time, not because it's your fault, it's just that you've got too much interesting stuff to deliver. But can I suggest that you put your position paper, you send it to the secretariat, so we put it on the website, and we'll email all our members as well, because I do believe the work you're doing is fantastic in terms of the National Housing and Mortgage Fund, and I believe other countries in Africa will definitely benefit from that. I do have, however, just some questions that may have been asked, but to Madam May, I wanted to also just thank you for, the wonderful presentation. It's basically the detail was very important. It helped with disclosure and transparency. I believe the Secretariat, CAF, and also AUHF will benefit from that. So I think to both our speakers, I wanted to thank you and just mention that there were questions asked from for Madam May in terms of whether Olan Waju is fully occupied. And also there was a question from Susan Terry as well, just to check if the informal settlement upgrade, if Egypt undertakes any informal settlement upgrade, or is the policy to relocate to social housing units, because no figures were provided. So maybe in answering those questions, I just maybe want to hear last minute comments from Madam May. Thank you for that detailed presentation. And Brother Zumanu, you're the prophet for housing in Ghana. Thank you so much for the great work you're doing with the fund. But I want to assure you that we will give it proper focus, and when we put it on the website and we send it to the members, and the Secretariat will send you a lot of the questions. But you being here today, we appreciate. And the DG for Human Settlements for South Africa, Mr. Bulelo Changana, just apologized because of technical errors in coming in. But the Secretariat has assured us that he will still participate and will be advised when, but during the week. Madam May, would you like to maybe answer the question? whether the Waju is fully occupied, and then maybe we just have last-minute comments from Brother Dilali. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Andrew. For the informal part, this is another program that is carried by another fund that is also affiliated to the Ministry of Housing. They have a different program. They relocate people from informal, dangerous houses that were built informally to other nearby locations, not necessarily in new cities. Most of the people in informal areas do not want to leave their areas where there are, and we had experiences in the past to relocate them in new cities far away from where they were, but it failed because they ended up setting up their units. So we adopted a new policy where we take their lands, demolish where they are, and build something near to them, and we take back the land so that we sell it or build other things on it, but it has to be near. This is another program that is monitored by another fund affiliated to the Ministry of Housing, and also needs allocation from the budget. We have done so far around $250,000 of resettling people from informal housing to new locations. The other part of the question was about the people living in the units we delivered. Yeah, as I said, we monitor occupancy. We do site checks in all the locations. We have people who are responsible for that. We have indicators under the World Bank loan to have at least a 75% occupancy rate so that we can disburse money under the loan. And this is something we suggested to make sure that people occupy those units. We will not allocate all those funds so that that people hold those houses just for investments or to re-rent or sell. This is a targeted program, so anyone who takes a unit has to live in it, and they sign undertakings inside the mortgage contract that they will live continuously in those units to make sure that we offer the units to the people who really need it. Is that okay? Are there any other questions, Andrew? I lost the voice.
Andrew, you're on.
I'm handing over to Kesha. Madam May, if I had a prize, you'd have the prize for best presentation, best disclosure. You were fantastic. I told you the pharaohs in Egypt are looking after you and the country of Egypt. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Dilali. I'll just hand over for the roundup to our secretariat. Kesha Rust, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And thank you for moderating this session. There is so much detail and there's so much that we can learn from both the Egyptian and the Ghanaian experience. And I think from our side, we really need to pull that together, document it, and put it somehow onto the website to share it with colleagues. There's good interest expressed in the chats as well. And I think this is really very exciting to be able to share these experiences and progress. To that, we will also add the inputs from the South African government and the Department of Human Settlements. It was a pity that we couldn't include them in the session today. So May Abdelhamid, thank you very much, our Vice Chairman of the African Union for Housing Finance. And as our chairman said, we would be delighted for more members from Egypt to join you so that you're not lonely in representing your country and the housing issues in your country. And Dilali Zumanu, thank you very much for your participation and engagement. We have one member in Ghana, FMB Ghana, is a member of the AUHF, and we are very keen to broaden our membership so we can more proactively engage with the affairs of Ghana as well and really learn from everything that you have to share. So thank you, everybody, again. And we will now close this session and move on to the next session, which is niche market opportunities in Kenya's affordable housing sector. If you give us 1 minute, we'll do the shift. Thank you very much, everybody.